Bienvenidos a esta sesión de AI in Personalized Learning. Welcome everyone to this session of AI in Personalized Learning. So we have a distinguished set of panelists here, but it is also true that we have many panelists. So if they introduce themselves, we will eat into the time that we have to learn from their wisdom. So I'm going to get right into it. I do want to remind the panelists that AI is extraordinary, but it hasn't defied and eliminated the laws of mathematics. So 45 minutes, 9 people means 5 minutes per person. So please keep that in mind as we proceed. So I want to start with defining terms. So I want to ask what is personalized learning? And maybe, George, since you have studied this for many, many years, we know that it isn't new, but maybe the vehicle, or at least the way in which generative AI works, presents a new way of doing it. So if you could start, don't give us a whole history, but if you could start telling us what personalized learning is, and then why is it different now?
Sure. So I'd say, first of all, personalized learning through technology is the intention of providing each learner with a learning experience that reflects her needs, her pace of learning, her best approaches to being an impactful and effective learner. And that typically is a function of how quickly content is presented, the format in which content is presented, the depth at which content is presented. And so the intent, and this has long been a holy grail in the education sector, is personalized learning that allows a technology system to achieve what's often referenced as Bloom's 2 sigma difference, which is the benefit of a one-to-one relationship between a qualified, capable tutor and between the individual learner themselves. So that's a quick overview of the definition. It's had a long history in computer science as a domain. CMU has been one of the more active places, everything from intelligent tutoring systems to a range of different models around how we might guide and support students. Unfortunately, it typically doesn't scale. It's very intensive in terms of time and effort to create the right first data models and then the right approach to trigger interventions that direct the skill set of an individual student, and very hard to assess the capability of a student. So I think that's where generative AI starts to come in with some promise, because with the right prompting context window, and I'd argue data architecture of a learner profile fed into those LLM interactions, there's a prospect that we can maybe get closer than we have been in the past.
All right, and just so that I understand well, the previous technologies were trying to personalize learning by mapping a whole tree of if you do this, you do that. And the promise of generative AI is that you don't have to specify all the paths, that the technology can help you with that?
Roughly, that's
okay.
So it's in some ways a bit similar to, if you're familiar with the argument that Gary Marcus has made for a while, you know, the idea of symbolic AI, which requires heavy processing, heavy articulation and definition in advance, versus neural networks, which are more closely mimic a non-rule-based human neural architecture.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, George. All right, so now let's try to picture what personalized learning looks like. I'm looking at you, Alvin. You might have a vision of how this might look like in 5 or 10 years. Can you tell us what does that experience actually looks like?
So I think beyond what Bloom did, which was essentially a one-to-one tutor, I think that concept isn't even that 10, 20 years ago. What we're talking about is actually apprenticeship is something that's been around for thousands of years. That's actually how we've been learning long before we had universities. And that's what essentially one-to-one learning is. That's what personalized learning is. You spend not a class, but years with somebody, and to understand the learning model, the habits, the skill sets of that individual, and then to change the way you teach with it. And I think that's what we're coming to today, is that with AI, with wearable devices, we will have an ability for there not just to be neural network training, but for it to be personalized to every individual. Because like the glasses I'm wearing today, it has microphone, it has cameras, it can actually perceive everything that I perceive, and take that information to help change the way that the information presented to me. In fact, if in another year or so, this kind of a glasses, which is an immersive device, can get to this type of glasses, it will also be able to present information to me in a multi-dimensional, multimodal way. And that way, it can actually change the way that the material is presented to give me the most immersive way to get that point across. And in fact, if at some point we may even get some neural signals from it to know, am I confused? Am I learning? Am I actually understanding it? And to adjust the difficulty of that content. So all of this is coming. So the combination of immersive technology with AI, with sensing information, is going to allow us to have the perfect teacher that is with you 24/7, not just for kids, but actually for all ages, so you have lifelong learning. And I think that's what we really need to get to, is to allow every single individual in the world to have a perfect tutor that is all-knowing and takes into that perspective that what do you need to know at the time. I don't know how many people have read the book Diamond Age, Young Ladies Primer, Neil Stephenson. Anyway, and there's the idea is that Nell, the protagonist, has a tablet that goes with her as she grows up from a child to an adult. And it keeps teaching her lessons as she goes through the story. And I think that's what we are going to have, is because these kind of glasses, you're wearing essentially all your waking moments. And it will be able to sense all the information you have. And it will be able to give you real-time feedback in terms of teaching you based on your experiences. And that's what I think the kind of ultimate potential of personalized learning is.
All right, I'm going to do a follow-up. In 10 seconds, you need to answer.
Yes.
Does that mean no teacher, human teacher in the classroom?
I think that changes the role of the teacher. The
Okay.
role of the teacher today is to go and give you a bunch of facts, put it onto board, and say,
Okay, 10 seconds are done. All right, we're moving. All right, Rafael, what's your vision for how personalized learning looks like in an actual setting?
Building on what you said, for me it's going to be, first of all, let's think about what AI can do in the next 2 or 4 months, because in 6 months we don't know, okay?
Yeah.
So for me, what they can provide as of today is the perfect 50% teacher, okay? I think there are plenty of things that are never going to be able to do it, AI. No? AI is never going to be able to understand if he needs a positive or enthusiastic reinforcement, feedback. We are very far of that. But in terms of knowledge, okay, what for me is incredible and is a fantastic opportunity is to have an unlimited teacher for you. Take economy, no? Because you move to other, it depends of the
Subject.
Of the topic, no? But you take economics, you can put, as of today, everything that we know about economy and have unlimited teacher for each one of the students, okay? That will create a lot of problems, because imagine when you have your professor and when the student says, no, my GPT is saying another thing,
Yeah.
So it can create a lot of conflicts. But the potential for 50% is immediate and is there. And this opportunity to have unlimited interaction is fantastic. People, from my experience, learn when they are searching, not when they are listening, okay? So, and knowledge calls for knowledge.
Yeah.
So if you can ask questions and questions and questions, and you get the people to enter on that dynamic, I think this is unmatchable. No?
Yeah.
But again, you're going to have to manage the conflicts and the trade-offs.
Yeah, that's a powerful place, because when you're learning with an AI tool, you're asking questions, which is kind of much better than the alternative.
And you have
ways.
to be, I mean, from what we have learned in the history, in science, everything that can be done is done. Okay?
Yes.
Here, I think that the challenge for educational institution is at what level they are able to control, the implementation or adoption of this type of technologies. No? I mean, if you provide, for example, a ChatGPT specialized on economy, you must be very confident that it's very well curated the information.
Of
so
course,
you can
of course.
even trust him on top
Yeah.
of the professor.
When you say that, when you say 50%, you're essentially describing that ChatGPT or similar technologies nowadays is equivalent to the median teacher in terms of skill and knowledge. Is that what you're describing? No?
You can create the super teacher, because you can have,
Right.
there is a limit in the amount
Yeah.
of understanding that you can have,
Yeah.
okay? And also you can create a teacher that has no ideological or beliefs biases, which is very important.
Yes,
no?
yes.
But this is for 50%. There is another 50% that has to do with emotional.
Oh, so 50% of the job.
Of the job of the teacher.
I see.
So I don't think it's going to replace it.
So I won't lose my
No.
job immediately, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, as you have noticed, I'm worried about that a little bit. All right, Maria Isabel, I want to ask you, so you're an expert in education, and I want to ask you, I mean, George described personalized learning as a holy grail. Why is this so important? Why do you think we should, it seems like every time we talk about the benefits of AI, personalized learning comes up, even George's presentation this morning, towards the top of the list. Why is this so important?
Well, first of all, I would like to compliment, your words. I mean, this is super exciting. I mean, I think about the possibilities and it makes me happy, right? As an educator, I see the possibilities in the classroom. On the other hand, it makes me a little bit sad, right? Because I wonder, like, why do I wake up every morning, right? Why do I show up in the classroom, right? Why do I build that connection with my students if, artificial intelligence can do that for me, right? So we can't forget that piece, right? Like, of course, it's all about a balance, right? Like, we can use it as a tool, but we can't forget, what makes us like good teachers. And my mission, right? Like, I get up every day every day I go to school, and I just wanna share the possibilities with my students at the university. I mean, I want for them to be the best teachers ever, right? I want for them to be in the classroom, to listen to the students, to develop curiosity, to develop agency, to develop a sense of belonging, to develop joy in the students. So I wonder, like, are those machines gonna do that for us, right? So it's exciting, but at the same time, it has to make us reflect about the kind of curriculum that we build, right? And how can we develop the best skills for these, kind of jobs that the future requires.
Great. So Rafael is saying, don't worry, because for that 50% of the job, you will still wake up every day to do it. Okay, great, thank you. All right, so I want to maybe move to how examples of specific ways in which teachers can or professors can use personalized learning. I think Alvin went to this is coming, we're all going to wear glasses and in a classroom of the future. I think Rafael approximated a little bit more like what we could do today. But I wanna ask specific ways in which educators can do this. So let me start with John. John, you want to describe?
Sure. So, is this thing on?
Yeah.
So I think that for me, I think when we talk about personalized learning, it's sort of this false promise, this unicorn that's always out there. It's because our schools and universities just aren't built for it. These are factories. And it's kind of like walking into a Starbucks and you'd be like, oh my gosh, I got anything I want in the Starbucks, right? You have how many thousands of combinations of stuff you can get out of there. But at the end of the day, you still have Starbucks, right? Yeah. And that's the same thing that we have within school. So we've got fixed curricula, fixed bodies of knowledge, fixed expertise. And now, I think George was touching on this, that we're about halfway there with personalized learning, because we can provide feedback. And this is where I think that things get really interesting, because we can offload much of the cognitive load that teachers have in providing feedback, especially for hard-to-measure skills and competencies. Like, are you a creative visionary? Can you express entrepreneurship? Can you express some computational thinking? Now, for a teacher to evaluate these things, these are really hard to evaluate and take a whole lot of thinking, a whole lot of cognitive load. With AI, we can offload a lot of that and provides at least some initial feedback, and then ease the role of the teacher to actually focus on more of the individual student's needs based on that.
Let me push a little bit more. Can you do that today?
We can do it today. So I did.
When you say we, you mean like you and two other people, or we like everyone in this room?
Okay, so anybody else can do this. So I did a quick pilot for the World Bank for their Evoke project, where I don't know really how to program with this stuff. I'm using PHP. That's not my language, but it's used in Moodle, right? So I asked ChatGPT, I said, well, here's a problem. I want to connect API to API, mediate between them, and all has to be in PHP, which I really don't know. So using ChatGPT, I actually built now 50 lines of code that pulled student assignments out of Moodle, portfolio posts or written essays, and then fed them through ChatGPT through a query to provide personalized feedback. And then it spits it back to Moodle as an automated response. And the results were actually really good. This first take. Does it answer everything? Does it solve everything? No, but at least students get that initial feedback. So if you're doing a first draft of something, they're able to work on this stuff and then bring it to a teacher later on for fuller evaluation. And I was really impressed. But I think that's just half the way, because it doesn't really respond to students' creativity. So what do you want to learn? Where do you want to go, right? Yeah. It can provide feedback on how you're doing, but in terms of nurturing your curiosity, it's not quite there yet. We have a ways to go.
I'm going to push you a little bit more.
All right.
So you describe a process, and I'm sure people here are wondering, why didn't the students submit their thing to ChatGPT and get that feedback? Why do you need to write 50 lines of code and do all of that? Give us the answer to that.
You know, they absolutely could.
Okay.
But I think this is very new for students, and I think that access to technology is not quite equally distributed. But I think that it's going to get there. And so it's going to be commonplace. I've heard many times already today, people are concerned about students writing through this stuff. But I think it's going to be commonplace to use this stuff to augment students' work. Yeah. I think we have to get away from creating the correct response to creating your response. And I think that's the important part of this, especially when we put in the context of personalized learning.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, John. Okay, I'm going to move to Faraón. I'm going to ask the question in Spanish, but it's the same question that I asked John. Faraón, ¿nos puedes contar cómo usas tú Generative AI en tu trabajo, en tu enseñanza?
Sí, disculpad, mi intervención va a ser más mundana.
No hay problema, queremos
no
eso.
Es bajar las ideas a tierra, es llevarlas al aula, que es lo que interesa. Entonces, experiencias recientes de este curso que creo que pueden hacerla. Yo no quiero hacer enseñanza personalizada, no puedo atender, pero sí que quiero personalizar la experiencia de mis estudiantes que acuden a mi asignatura reglada. La primera es, el viernes se presenta una iniciativa de comunidad de aprendizaje en mi universidad, me pidieron que grabara un vídeo, lo subí a la plataforma, con un clic lo transcribió, con otro clic lo tradujo al valenciano, con otro clic lo tradujo al inglés, de manera que con 2 clics podremos tener recursos educativos que pueden atender a una mayor diversidad de estudiantes, ya si puede generar vídeo y todo esto. La segunda experiencia, el viernes acabé un curso de formación para profesores de universidad a través del ICE, Instituto de Ciencias de la Educación, sobre IA generativa, con Marc Allier de la Politécnica de Cataluña, y quisimos, a final de curso, el curso era una sección presencial, una síncrona por videoconferencia en la plataforma Moodle. Les dejamos materiales, vídeos, documentos, artículos. Y a mitad del curso quisimos predicar con el ejemplo, y tenemos entrenado un sistema con todos nuestros materiales, de forma que los estudiantes podían preguntar con el chat GPT, les contestaba con los materiales de nuestro curso. Por tanto, estaba controlado a lo que contestaban. Además, les hacía referencia de dónde había salido y planteaba posibles preguntas que podían continuar. ¿Vale? Ese sistema utiliza un modelo de lenguaje, pues, como caso llama, pero se puede conectar cualquiera, y lo entrenas con tu material.
Es
y la
como
tercera,
un tutor.
Okay. Que tú le enseñas, porque al final no habrá una IA como ChatGPT a la que preguntas todo y sabe de todo, sino que habrá mini IAs que sepan de tu materia. Lo que hay que construir son enjambres de asistentes inteligentes que puedan relacionarse.
Perfecto.
Y la última es una plataforma de aprendizaje personalizado, bueno, no entrar en ella, pero sí que sirve a actividades. Pues esa servir a actividades, que la hace la más adecuada al estudiante para ese momento, dar la actividad la da un motor, y ese motor lo hemos separado en 2 fases. Una de IA predictiva, que le asigna, que predice cuál es el tiempo y el resultado que obtendrá el alumno para cada actividad, de las posibles que pueda hacer, pero luego la decisión la toma según las estrategias instruccionales que pueden decir quiero que sea lo más eficiente, camino más rápido, una fase relajada, y esa estrategia instruccional la controla el profesor, de manera que con la IA permite automatizar la asignación, pero el profesor puede establecer las estrategias a nivel individual o a nivel colectivo.
Excelente. Muchas gracias, Fernando. Okay, so now I'm going to move to Eunice. So, Eunice, the way that George described for us personalized learning at the beginning, there are many aspects of it, but some of the aspects have to do with being adapted to the pace that a student wants to use in their learning, their particular interests, their background on the topic, and so on. So nowadays, with ChatGPT or similar models, a student can learn by personalizing to themselves, by simply typing into the chat, I'm this kind of learner, I have this background on the topic, and so on. You seem to have spent some time creating tools that are on top, I imagine, of some of these LLMs, or maybe independent of them. Could you tell us about the tools that you have developed and how they play into this?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So I'll share with you a little personal journey how I came into AI and personalized learning. So I started teaching on campus, and when you have 20 students, 30 students, you can give them personalized feedback, and it's very manageable. Even in a class of 100 students or 200 students, you have TAs, and you can give them personalized feedback. So eventually we started building MOOCs, massive open online courses. And when we had like 1,000, 2,000 students, it was still difficult, but you can still reply, you can still give each one where they're stuck. Fast forward, we ended up having around 1.4 million learners. And then it becomes extremely difficult to cater to every individual. And that's where we started building these tools. And these tools, they end up helping the learner. First of all, these tools, they're not simple ChatGPT. They tend to be augmented with tools, like you can augment them with Wolfram Alpha or calculators or different software. And you can also help with chain of thought reasoning, so you walk them how the problems are solved. The other problem we've seen that also comes into play when talking about AI and personalized learning is 65% of learners are visual learners. And what that entails, it means when you use a large language model, it's very difficult to create graphs or plots or diagrams that are relevant to that question. So again, with these tools, you can actually cater to the other 65% of personalized learners. Doing multiple choice generation, for example, when you have 4 potential answers, each answer is usually a different track or a different wrong lead that identifies a different concept. So with one multiple choice question, you could target several skill sets and quickly target what the next question will be. So there are a lot of different tools and strategies when it comes to implementing these AI in personalized learning.
Great, thank you. Okay, I want to come back to George. George, you said maybe in passing, but I think you meant it more than in passing, that it's not just adapting to the pace and the background of the students and so on, but you mentioned student profile data as being an important component. Can you describe for us, and we have reached the stage that I was hoping we reached, which is every one of you has spoken at least once, so now I want more interaction. So if you want to respond to George, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. But could you describe, is that possible today? And if it is, how to do it? And if it's not, what are the barriers to get there?
Sure. So one of the challenges with LLMs is they're largely stateless. And the difficulty is if you want a persistent profile of a learner that you want to attend to specific needs, you need some indication of who that learner is. Because, if you go to ChatGPT, ask it a question, go back, same browser, 2 seconds later, you'll get sometimes reasonable variations in your responses. So that means it doesn't care about you and it doesn't know you. And the whole point of education is for us to be known by the system and a teacher to personalize, or, as Alvin was saying, for a mentor or an apprentice to be guided in an effective way. So the way we've approached it is we've said, look, we're going to, at least short term, I don't believe that larger context windows like Gemini has is the solution in the long run. So my background, I've been active in development of learning analytics as an academic discipline. And so we spent a lot of time understanding which sequences of learner-generated data are indicative of attention wandering, are indicative of learner confusion, disengagement. And so we developed a model where we're looking at 6 attributes of a profile. So cognitive, metacognitive, affect, social, emotional, well-being, and skill sets. And so what we want to do is say at each of those levels, we've identified sort of key variables that we want to work with and identify that says, George understands this concept, or George manages time well. And if I don't, then we're going to, through an integration we're largely just passing it in context windows to the LLM that says, this is George's profile, George's current state. This gets fed here, it responds. The outcome of that, we're pulling it back as a text file into an S3 bucket. It gets analyzed, fed back to the profile. And so that's the model. We're saying, look, LLMs have a lot of potential to appear to be intelligent, but when we're teaching, there's much more nuance about a profile. So that's the mechanism we're utilizing to help integrate and accelerate the capabilities of the LLM in that approach.
Great. So your platform passes on, in essence, the profile information to the LLM so that the response is tailored to that profile. Great, thank you.
Can I respond a little bit? I think that essentially what you're doing is extending the context window, right? Because even with Gemini, totally well, yes and no. I mean, if the context window is 100,000 tokens, then you're right, it's very different. But if you get to, like, say, LongNet, which is 1 billion tokens, right? Then essentially you have a long-term memory of that conversation. In fact, if you look at what...
It's not the memory, it's the ability to create attributes of profiles from data that are disconnected from context. It's actually saying this sequence of patterns says you are an individual who learns in this way. You've shown cognitive efficiency in understanding a key topic for this reason.
Yeah, but if you have enough of a context, then you essentially, it should be able to grasp that type of understanding. If you're doing interactive discussions with the learner, then it should be able to know whether you are right or wrong, or you're doing quizzes in between.
So I'll just make quick. It should is a very big future word. I can tell you right now, I can build a profile of your interaction data while you're engaging in a learning process that indicates your mind is wandering or you understood a concept. I don't need a large context window. In the big context window, there's a fair bit of controversy on whether a context window solves that. Even with the 1.5 million, size token context window, still the benefit of RAG or graph RAG technologies to make sense of localized data makes a lot of sense. So I think a context window as a personalization mechanism that's disconnected from a profile, I'm not convinced of. If it happens, I'll happily change my mind, but I know what we can do today.
Yeah.
All right, wait. Moderator has a right here. It's getting a little bit technical. You two go and have a cup of coffee. John, you wanna rejoinder here?
I just want to break up that fight there.
Okay. It's not a fight, but the disagreement is at a level where 80% of people in the room might not be following. So I just want to...
But here's the thing, though, for all of us who don't follow, right? Because we talk about whether context windows work or not, what you need, etc. All right, here's the thing. If it doesn't work now, it will work in the near future. And the important thing for schools and universities is that finally we have a heads up on what the future is going to be like. We have a chance to prepare. We have a chance to act now, right? So whether or not we can debate whether or not what works, what doesn't work, but we have a vision for the future. We have a vision for the technologies that we are developing, and we're going to get there. That's it.
Every time you say we, I'm like, am I part of this we or not? Who is we?
Yeah, you have many sleepless nights now.
Okay, all right. So, Rafael, you want to?
There's something that, yes. I mean, we're talking all the time about the potential benefits and the potential risk about artificial intelligence in human beings, no? But I have something that strikes me, like a major question. What do we know really about the human beings? Okay? Because I found interesting what the anthropologists start saying this morning, but where do we know, where can we find a deep understanding of what as of today is known, not known, what is debate, and what is fake about the human beings? Because we're talking about the raw material that's going to use it.
Yeah.
And I thought my concern is to make sure that this doesn't get out of control. We are going to have to come back
to understanding what
A simple
what makes
question,
us human?
But
We
the problem
had a
is,
talk about that this morning, and you have a startup to figure this out.
I think this is a challenge we're going to have to face in the world. Okay? I think since Nietzsche killed the human being at the end of the 18th century, we have stopped to study human being as a whole, in a holistic way. Okay? So I cannot spend 60 years going through the 40 degrees in humanities, and still on top of that we'll have to study biology, neuroscience. We have to come back and better understand the human beings. Because if not, we are going to jump to the potential benefits, and we are not going to understand what are the real benefits and the real problems. No? So not everything, to make sure that this, which is absolute the revolution, doesn't get out of control, we're going to have to, in parallel, try to much better understand human being and to be able to convey that knowledge in a very synthesized, clear, actionable way, which is something that we're not looking for. Maybe because it's a huge task, but I don't think it's huger than what we have done with the genome, no? Or
with other similar technology. Okay, thank you. Right, I want to come to the two of you now. So you have done both teaching in person and online, but I'm gonna assign you as an online role, and you care about these little kids as human beings and teach in person. So I want to understand the potential of personalized learning online relative to in person. So can you reflect, since you have done both, and then I want you to come back, Marisabel, with how do you personalize learning with the help of AI, or maybe not?
Thank you. Definitely. So online, one of the main benefits of personalized learning is that you don't need to have an army of TAs who would go and help each individual.
Teaching assistants.
Yes, a teaching assistants. Thank you. Who are going to go and answer each individual learner's question. And you can, with one person, you can impact millions of learners. And this is exactly what we're seeing today in governments that we work with. That from a very centralized government within the Ministry of Education, for example, they could build a simple software and then suddenly impact 7 million learners, especially where they don't have capabilities to improve the education system. Classes are crowded, student to teacher ratios aren't as good. And this is one of the most beautiful things about AI and personalized learning, how you need maybe a team of 2 or 3 people at most, and you can have a massive impact. And that's exactly what we've seen online with massive open online courses and completion rates.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right.
Yeah, well,
Can you do that in a physical classroom?
Yes,
Okay.
I can. I mean, I had to say that, being in this conversation is making me think about how little I know about artificial intelligence, right? I haven't gotten any kind of training, and we need more professional development around this topic, right? And in person, it's a little bit easier, right? I have been teaching online as well, and I know the challenges is super hard. For me, in person is easier, right? Because I have the ability to, I have the possibility to connect with my student, right? During, a whole semester, I can get to know them. I can, I learn from them, right? I know what they are interested in, right? I know their passions, so I can build my curriculum around them, right? So it's easier in that sense.
Sorry for the interruption. How many students do you have?
Well, I have a group of 30 people, so
30
it's
people.
easier, exactly.
Okay.
So we do like large discussions, like small group discussions, so that give us the opportunity to get to know each other.
Students.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence, I have been using it a little bit, right? I use it for the development of my own syllabus, and also I let them use it, right? We have to explore it, but I don't use it in the sense that, okay, use it just to get the result. Use it for the process, right, of that investigation. We are, doing an inquiry, so yeah, let's explore it, let's use it, right, let's learn. But yeah, for me, like I'm not focused on the result because, I don't care. I mean, the machine can do it for us, right? So I'm focusing more on developing the skills during that process of learning.
Let me ask you one question. Suppose, I'll go to you in a second. So suppose that we could transport his glasses to you in the glasses have more capabilities. Can you imagine going from a classroom of 30 to a classroom of 60 where maybe it's a little bit harder to get to know your students? But when you are teaching and you look at a student, all of a sudden there's something that tells you something about that student that would allow you to interact with them. Is that like, no way, I can't handle too much technology? Or
No,
how are we thinking about that?
I'm happy to explore it.
You
Yeah,
were
it's like
happy.
everything, right? Like, yeah.
The glasses?
Yeah.
You want to give it to her? Okay, all right.
Yeah, happy to learn. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay, you would explore it.
Yeah, I will explore it. Yeah, it's
Would,
like, you know,
would your
when,
colleagues do it? Would your colleagues do it?
I don't think so. I mean, resistance is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like even to change people how to teach, right? Like some people teach more in a traditional way, right? So to change that is even hard, right? Because that's how they learned. But yeah, so then if you add technology, it might be a little bit more difficult, but who knows, right? Like we have to believe that people can change their mindset, right? That's why we are in education. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Faraon,
Technology is available today, by the way.
that technology is available today. All right, we're gonna match you up. You have coffee with him for your technical, and then with her for the classroom. Por favor.
Sí, bueno, que estoy muy a gusto en este debate en tecnólogos que hablamos de IA y de tecnología, pero me sale la vena de educador, de profesor. Y la personalización es maravillosa, pero tiene la inteligencia artificial optimiza y optimiza quien le diga qué tiene que optimizar. Perfilaremos a los estudiantes, claro, para darle la actividad más adecuada tienes que conocerlo, pero ¿qué haremos con ese etiquetado de los estudiantes?
Yeah.
La ley europea te habla de los usos y de que el uso, el que hay que asegurar mucho es que no se utilice para la entrada y el acceso a los sitios, es decir, la personalización es muy interesante, el conocer muy bien a los estudiantes es maravilloso, pero habrá que ir con cuidado quién controla o qué uso se hace de esa
Hay una barrera
personalización.
legal, una barrera legal.
Vale.
Y quizás
Bueno,
ética.
legal y moral, para mí más moral que legal, la legal vendrá. Y la otra reflexión es que llevamos toda la vida hablando de tutores inteligentes y todos sabemos que para enseñar aprendes más cuando le enseñas a alguien que no sabe. ¿Por qué no hacemos aprendices torpes en lugar de tutores inteligentes?
Me gusta eso. Okay. We have 90 seconds left. If you have something on your chest you want to get out. All right, so I have one more question. Maybe you can... So, this session was about personalized learning, but we didn't personalize learning to the people who were here. So, what could we have done with the technology of today and with the constraints that we had in this room to personalize the session to the people in this room?
Allow them to ask the question, maybe?
Allow them to ask the question is a good idea, but we only have a minute. So I'm
First person to ask a question wins.
all right. There's a question there.
I'll be a little provocative. I think Maria Isabel touched upon it. You've talked generally about access to information. Is access to information learning? This could be interpreted as like a super elaborate Google.
Yeah.
Right? With a very elaborate, very great. How is that connected to learning necessarily?
Okay, John, you seem ready for this one.
No, just simply having access to, I'm going to try to be really quick. Simply having access to information isn't learning, because it doesn't mean anything. I mean, information is built from data. But to create learning, you have to build knowledge, which is incorporating, the tacit experiences you get from day-to-day life, plus this explicit stuff that you get from tapping into information smartly. You combine these two things together, then you got personal learning. Then you got some learning. But otherwise, information is just, it's chewed up data.
I think there is a very important issue, which is we are assuming that all information is written.
Yeah.
So AI is going to access this information, no?
Yeah.
And have the problems, how we're going to deal with it. But we have analyzed 4,000 decisions that were made by 60 large organizations in the last 5 years. We found 80% of the knowledge was on the minds people.
Yeah.
And widespread
Yeah.
on average, in group of 20 to 25 people, okay? So this is very important, because we are assuming,
Yeah.
that everything is written, and it's not, okay?
Yes.
When you come to close decision, a specific situation, the knowledge is still, a lot of the knowledge in the people's minds. So we find new ways to have collaborative intelligence, which is something we are very bad on it, because teams or this is impossible to interact with people, and they have the knowledge.
Thank you. Ricardo Hausman, my colleague at the Harvard Kennedy School, speaks of know-how as being kind of the key source of knowledge that helps countries develop. So to the extent that know-how is hard to codify in AI, that's certainly a limitation. All right, speaking of limitations, it's 5 o'clock. We need to close this session, but please give a big round of applause to our marvelous panelists. Thank you. All righty. Gracias.
Muy bien, perfectamente.
Estuvo difícil.
Very, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.